My name is Serafina, and I thought I knew my family until the night my sister Delilah called me a burden in front of our entire extended family at Thanksgiving dinner. Her words cut deeper than any knife, but what I discovered afterward about her secret schemes made that public humiliation look like child's play. The financial documents I found hidden in her bedroom revealed a betrayal so devastating that it would destroy our family forever and change everything I believed about blood loyalty. Before we dive into this wild family revenge story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama stories. Trust me, you will want to see how this sister rivalry turned into the ultimate justice served moment that left everyone speechless. Growing up, Delilah and I were supposed to be the perfect sister duo. She was 3 years older, blonde, confident, and everything our parents seemed to want in a daughter. I was the quiet one, the studious one, the one who always seemed to fade into the background whenever she entered a room. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, owned a successful chain of boutique hotels across the East Coast, and we grew up privileged but always under pressure to maintain the family reputation. The Thanksgiving incident happened when I was 25 and had just returned from graduate school with my MBA. I had been working part-time at the family business while studying, mainly handling administrative tasks and learning the ropes. Delilah, on the other hand, had been groomed since college to take over operations as the future CEO. She held the title of Vice President of Operations and was clearly our father's favorite. That fateful Thursday evening, we were hosting our annual family gathering. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends filled our parents' sprawling Connecticut mansion. The dining room buzzed with conversation about business politics and family updates. I had been excited to share news about a potential partnership opportunity I had discovered during my studies, a sustainable tourism initiative that could revolutionize our hotel chain's environmental impact and significantly reduce operating costs. When I stood up to present my proposal using charts and projections, I had spent weeks preparing the room, initially grew quiet with polite attention. I explained how implementing green technologies and sustainable practices could save the company over $2 million annually while attracting environmentally conscious travelers. My research was thorough, my presentation professional, and my passion genuine. But as I concluded, instead of the supportive applause I had hoped for, I noticed uncomfortable glances being exchanged around the table. My father cleared his throat awkwardly, and my mother fidgeted with her pearl necklace. Then Delilah stood up, her face flushed with what I initially thought was excitement. "Everyone, I appreciate Serafina's enthusiasm," she began, her voice dripping with condescension. "But I think we need to be realistic here. This is exactly why I have been saying that we cannot keep carrying dead weight in this family business. Some people are just not cut out for leadership roles, no matter how many fancy degrees they collect." The words hit me like a physical blow, but she was not finished. "Serafina has always been more of a burden than an asset to this company. She lacks the vision, the drive, and frankly the business acumen necessary to make real decisions. This proposal is just another example of her living in an academic fantasy world instead of understanding real-world business operations. I think it is time we acknowledge that not everyone in this family is meant to be part of the executive team." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt 20 pairs of eyes staring at me, some with pity, others with embarrassment for witnessing such a public humiliation. My face burned with shame as I gathered my presentation materials with trembling hands. I mumbled an excuse about needing fresh air and fled to the garden, where I spent the rest of the evening crying among my mother's rose bushes. What made the humiliation even worse was that nobody defended me. Not my parents, not my cousins, who had always claimed to support me, not even my grandmother, who usually spoke up when family members crossed lines. They all just sat there allowing Delilah to destroy me publicly without consequence. The weeks following Thanksgiving were torturous. I threw myself into work determined to prove Delilah wrong, but I noticed things had changed. Colleagues who used to include me in meetings suddenly forgot to send invitations. Projects I had been leading were reassigned without explanation. Even my assistant began treating me differently, as if I were some kind of liability rather than a department manager. 3 months after that horrible dinner, I was working late one Friday evening, trying to finish a quarterly report that nobody seemed to care about anymore. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew. I had forgotten my laptop charger at home and remembered seeing an extra one in Delilah's office. She was away on a business trip, so I used my master key to enter her office and borrow the charger. As I plugged in my laptop at her desk, I accidentally knocked over a stack of files. As I bent to collect the scattered papers, a particular document caught my eye. It was a bank statement, but not for any account I recognized as belonging to the company. The account holder was listed as D. Morrison Consulting Services, with an address I did not recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I began examining the statement more carefully. The deposits were substantial. Tens of thousands of dollars transferred monthly from an account labeled Sterling Hotels Operations Fund. My blood ran cold as I realized this was money being siphoned from our family business into what appeared to be Delilah's personal consulting company. With shaking hands, I photographed the document and continued searching through the files. What I discovered over the next hour made my stomach turn. Delilah had been systematically embezzling money from the family business for over 3 years. She had created fake vendor accounts, inflated contractor bills, and even charged personal expenses as business costs. The total amount stolen exceeded $1.7 million. But the financial theft was only the beginning of her deception. I found contracts showing that she had been secretly negotiating to sell our family's flagship hotel in Manhattan to a development company. The sale was structured to make it appear as a strategic business decision, but the real buyer was a shell company she controlled. She planned to purchase the property at below market value, then immediately resell it for triple the price, pocketing the difference while destroying our family legacy. Most devastating of all, I discovered emails between Delilah and our company's board of directors discussing my performance issues and suggesting I be removed from any operational responsibilities. She had been systematically undermining my reputation, spreading lies about my competence and building a case to have me pushed out of the company entirely. Her Thanksgiving speech was not a spontaneous outburst. It was part of a calculated campaign to eliminate me as a threat to her schemes. The weekend after my discovery felt like the longest of my life. I sat in my apartment, staring at the evidence spread across my dining table, trying to process the magnitude of Delilah's betrayal. The sister I had looked up to my entire life, the person I had defended when others called her ruthless or ambitious, had been systematically destroying my life while stealing from our family. I knew I needed to be strategic about my next moves. Simply confronting Delilah would give her time to cover her tracks and spin the narrative in her favor. I needed irrefutable proof and the right moment to expose everything. So I began my own investigation, carefully documenting every piece of evidence while maintaining the appearance of normalcy at work. Over the following weeks, I discreetly gathered additional documentation. I accessed historical financial records that showed the pattern of fraudulent transactions dating back even further than I had initially discovered. I found invoices for contractors who did not exist, bills for services never rendered, and expense reports that claimed business meals at restaurants that were actually romantic dinners with her boyfriend Marcus. I also discovered that Delilah had been manipulating our parents. She had convinced them that the company was struggling financially due to market conditions and poor management decisions, specifically blaming departments I oversaw. In reality, the financial strain was entirely due to her embezzlement. She had our parents believing that aggressive cost-cutting measures were necessary, which justified her plans to sell off properties and eliminate staff positions. The most damning evidence came when I learned about her exit strategy. Hidden among her files were documents showing she had been planning to leave the family business within the year, taking her stolen funds to start a competing hotel chain on the West Coast. She intended to use our family's client base trade secrets and proprietary systems to launch her own company while leaving Sterling Hotels financially crippled. I realized that exposing Delilah privately would not be enough. She had spent years building her reputation as the responsible, capable daughter, while systematically destroying mine. I needed to reveal her crimes in a way that would make it impossible for anyone to doubt the truth, or for her to manipulate the situation. The opportunity came during our company's annual board meeting in April. This was always a major event, with all family members, board directors, key investors, and department heads in attendance. Delilah was scheduled to give the primary presentation about the company's future direction, including her proposal to sell the Manhattan property and restructure operations. I spent 2 weeks preparing my counter presentation. I organized every piece of evidence into a comprehensive timeline that clearly showed the pattern of fraud, manipulation, and betrayal. I created detailed financial analyses that demonstrated how Delilah's theft had artificially created the financial problems she claimed to be solving. I even hired a forensic accountant to independently verify my findings and provide expert testimony. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early and set up my materials in the conference room. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was absolute. When Delilah walked in looking confident and polished in her navy blue power suit, she barely acknowledged my presence. She had no idea that her entire world was about to collapse. The meeting began with routine agenda items, quarterly reports, market analyses, and operational updates. Delilah commanded the room as always, presenting her restructuring proposal with charts showing declining profits and the need for dramatic changes. She painted herself as the visionary leader who could save the family business through tough but necessary decisions. When she concluded her presentation, my father asked if there were any questions or additional comments before the board voted on her proposals. That was my moment. Actually, Dad, I have some additional information that the board needs to consider before making these decisions, I said, standing up and walking to the front of the room. Information about why our company is really facing financial difficulties. Delilah's confident smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. Serafina, I think we have covered all the relevant financial data in my presentation. Perhaps this would be better discussed in a smaller setting. No, I replied firmly, connecting my laptop to the projection system. I think everyone needs to see this right now. The first slide that appeared on the screen was a bank statement showing deposits from Sterling Hotel's operations fund into D. Morrison Consulting Services. A murmur went through the room as board members tried to understand what they were seeing. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. What you are looking at is evidence of systematic embezzlement that has been occurring within our company for the past 3 years. Over $1.7 million has been stolen from Sterling Hotels and transferred into accounts controlled by someone in this room. Delilah shot to her feet, her face flushing red. This is completely inappropriate, Serafina. You are disrupting an important board meeting with unfounded accusations and— These are not unfounded accusations, I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. These are bank records, email communications, and financial documents that I have spent months investigating and verifying. The forensic accountant I hired to review this evidence is prepared to testify that these documents show clear and deliberate financial fraud. The room erupted in shocked whispers as I methodically presented each piece of evidence. I showed the fake vendor accounts, the inflated bills, the personal expenses charged to the company, and the secret shell company created to purchase our Manhattan property at below market value. With each revelation, I could see the color draining from Delilah's face. But the most devastating moment came when I displayed the emails she had sent to board members, systematically undermining my reputation and building a case for my removal from the company. Reading her words aloud, calling me incompetent, unreliable, and a liability, while simultaneously showing how she had been stealing millions of dollars, created a stark contrast that left the room in stunned silence. The person who has been calling me a burden, I concluded, looking directly at my sister, has been systematically stealing from our family and planning to destroy the business our grandparents built. The financial problems she claims require selling our properties and eliminating jobs are entirely the result of her own criminal actions. The immediate aftermath of my presentation was chaos. Board members demanded explanations. My parents sat in stunned silence, and Delilah alternated between vehement denials and attempts to discredit my evidence. The meeting was adjourned without any votes being taken, but everyone understood that everything had changed. In the days that followed, I found myself at the center of a family civil war. Delilah, realizing that direct denial would not work, shifted to a strategy of attacking my motivations and methods. She claimed I had violated her privacy by accessing her office, suggested I had falsified documents out of jealousy, and even implied that my mental health issues were causing me to see conspiracies where none existed. Initially, some family members seemed unsure about what to believe. Delilah had spent years building her reputation as the reliable, responsible daughter, while I had been painted as the dreamy academic who lacked practical business sense. The cognitive dissonance of learning the truth was difficult for people to process immediately. However, I was not fighting this battle alone. The forensic accountant I had hired, Patricia Williams, was a former FBI financial crimes investigator with an impeccable reputation. Her independent analysis of the evidence removed any doubt about the authenticity of my findings. She presented her report to the board with clinical precision, making it impossible to dismiss the evidence as family drama or personal vendetta. My first key ally emerged from an unexpected source. My Uncle Thomas, my father's younger brother and a minority shareholder in the company, had always been suspicious of some of Delilah's financial decisions. He approached me privately after the board meeting and revealed that he had been conducting his own informal investigation into discrepancies he had noticed in quarterly reports. "I have been seeing red flags for months," Thomas told me over coffee at a small cafe far from the office. Expenses that did not make sense, vendor payments that seemed excessive, and Delilah's explanations that always sounded plausible but never quite added up. When you presented that evidence, everything suddenly clicked into place. Thomas had connections throughout the hospitality industry and began discreetly reaching out to other business contacts to verify some of the vendor accounts Delilah had created. What he discovered was even more damning than my original evidence. Several of the fake companies had been used to launder money through a network of shell corporations that extended far beyond what I had initially uncovered. My second crucial ally was Marcus Rodriguez, our company's IT director. Marcus had always been professional but distant in our interactions, and I was surprised when he requested a private meeting with me 2 weeks after the board presentation. "Serafina, I need to tell you something that I probably should have reported months ago," he began nervously. "Delilah has been asking me to help her access and modify financial databases in ways that seemed questionable. She claimed it was for legitimate business purposes, but some of her requests made me uncomfortable." Marcus revealed that Delilah had been pressuring him to alter historical financial records to hide evidence of her theft. She had also asked him to help her access email accounts belonging to other employees, including mine, so she could monitor internal communications and stay ahead of any potential investigations. Most importantly, Marcus had been secretly documenting these interactions because his professional instincts told him something was wrong. He had screenshots, recorded conversations, and detailed logs showing exactly when and how Delilah had attempted to manipulate the company's financial systems. "I was afraid to come forward because she made it clear that questioning her authority would result in termination," Marcus explained. "But after seeing your presentation, I realized I could not stay silent anymore. What she was asking me to do was not just unethical, it was criminal." As word of the investigation spread through the company, more allies began to emerge. Sarah Thompson, our head of human resources, revealed that Delilah had been manipulating employee evaluations and salary decisions to benefit people who supported her while penalizing those who might pose threats. Jennifer Walsh, our marketing director, disclosed that Delilah had been using company resources to promote her secret consulting business and had even attempted to poach clients for her planned competing venture. But perhaps the most significant ally was someone I had never expected: my grandmother, Eleanor Sterling, the family matriarch and original co-founder of the hotel chain with my grandfather. At 91 years old, Grandmother Eleanor was still sharp as a tack and maintained significant influence over family decisions, despite being officially retired. She had remained silent during the initial board meeting, observing everything with her characteristic poker face. 3 weeks after my presentation, she invited me to her estate for what she called afternoon tea and honest conversation. "Seraphina, dear," she said, as we sat in her sunroom overlooking the gardens, "I want you to know that I am proud of your courage in exposing this betrayal. It took tremendous strength to stand up in that room and tell the truth, especially knowing how it would tear the family apart." She paused to sip her tea, then continued with steel in her voice that reminded me why she had been such a formidable business leader in her younger years. "Your grandfather and I built this company from nothing, working 18-hour days and sacrificing everything to create something we could pass down to future generations. The idea that our own granddaughter would steal from the family legacy and try to destroy what we built is absolutely unforgivable." Grandmother Eleanor revealed that she had been quietly conducting her own investigation since my presentation, using her extensive network of contacts in banking, legal, and business circles. What she had discovered expanded the scope of Delilah's crimes even further. "She has been manipulating the books for longer than any of us realized," Eleanor said grimly. "My contacts at the bank showed me records indicating suspicious activity dating back almost 5 years. The total amount stolen is closer to $3 million, not the $1.7 million you originally calculated." But Eleanor's most shocking revelation concerned Delilah's ultimate plan. Through her investigation, she had learned that Delilah was not just planning to leave the family business. She was actively working to destroy it completely. "She has been providing confidential information about our operations, client lists, and business strategies to our competitors," Eleanor explained. "The plan was to cripple Sterling Hotels financially, then swoop in with her new company to acquire our properties and client base at bankruptcy prices. She was not just stealing money. She was orchestrating the complete destruction of our family legacy." As I listened to my grandmother's revelations, I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and determination. The sister I had grown up loving and admiring was not just a thief. She was a calculating predator who had been systematically destroying everything our family had built. But I also felt something else: the strength that comes from knowing you are not fighting alone. With Patricia Williams providing forensic expertise, Uncle Thomas leveraging his industry connections, Marcus documenting the technological aspects of the fraud, and Grandmother Eleanor offering her wisdom and influence, we were building a coalition that could not be dismissed or discredited. The war was far from over, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we might actually win. However, just as our alliance was gaining momentum and building an irrefutable case against Delilah, something happened that I never saw coming. Something that would test everything I thought I knew about loyalty, family, and justice. Just when I thought we had built an unshakable case against Delilah, the unthinkable happened. Marcus Rodriguez, the IT director who had provided crucial evidence about Delilah's attempts to manipulate financial databases, betrayed our alliance in the most devastating way possible. It started with small inconsistencies. Marcus began missing scheduled meetings with Patricia Williams, claiming technical emergencies at work. When he did show up, he seemed nervous and distracted, constantly checking his phone and avoiding eye contact. I initially attributed his behavior to stress about the investigation, but my grandmother Eleanor's instincts were sharper than mine. "Something is wrong with that young man," she told me during one of our strategy sessions. "He is acting like someone who has been compromised." Her words proved prophetic. 2 days before we were scheduled to present our expanded evidence to the board and law enforcement, Marcus requested an urgent private meeting with me. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the office and family properties. The moment I saw his face, I knew something terrible was coming. "Serafina, I need to tell you something, and you are not going to like it," he began, his hands shaking as he gripped his coffee cup. I have been thinking about this whole situation, and I realize I may have made some mistakes in my initial assessment of the evidence. My blood ran cold. What kind of mistakes, Marcus? Well, after reviewing the database logs more carefully, I think there might be alternative explanations for some of the activities I initially thought were suspicious. Database modifications that I attributed to Delilah's requests might have been routine system updates or authorized changes that I misunderstood at the time. I stared at him in disbelief. Marcus, you showed me screenshots and recordings. You documented everything in detail. Are you seriously telling me you were wrong about all of it? He could not meet my eyes. I think I may have been influenced by the emotional atmosphere surrounding this investigation. When you presented your evidence at the board meeting, I might have interpreted my interactions with Delilah in a way that supported your narrative rather than looking at them objectively. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Marcus was not just withdrawing his support. He was actively undermining the credibility of our entire case. Without his technical evidence, we lost crucial documentation about how Delilah had manipulated the company's financial systems. Worse, his reversal would make it look like our investigation was based on speculation and family drama, rather than solid evidence. Marcus, what really happened? I asked desperately. Did Delilah get to you? Did she threaten you or offer you something? His face flushed red, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the honest man who had originally come forward. Serafina, I am sorry. I really am, but I have a family to think about. I cannot afford to lose my job or face legal consequences for my role in accessing confidential information. That was when I realized the full scope of what had happened. Delilah had not just convinced Marcus to withdraw his testimony. She had made him fear that his cooperation with our investigation could be framed as criminal activity. As IT director, Marcus had accessed databases and employee communications that could be portrayed as violations of privacy laws if viewed in the wrong context. The timing of Marcus's betrayal was catastrophic. Patricia Williams had built significant portions of her forensic analysis around his technical evidence. Without his testimony, we lost not just individual pieces of proof, but the technological framework that explained how Delilah had executed her schemes. Uncle Thomas's industry connections and grandmother Eleanor's banking contacts provided circumstantial evidence, but Marcus's documentation had been the smoking gun that proved deliberate criminal intent. Even worse, Marcus did not just disappear quietly. 3 days after our coffee shop meeting, he sent a formal letter to the board of directors retracting his previous statements and apologizing for any confusion he might have caused during the investigation. The letter was clearly written by lawyers and designed to maximize damage to our credibility. Upon further reflection and consultation with legal counsel, the letter read, I realize that my initial interpretation of database activities and email communications may have been influenced by the charged atmosphere surrounding family disputes within the company. I want to clarify that I have no evidence of criminal wrongdoing by any member of the Sterling family, and I regret any misunderstandings my previous statements may have caused. The letter was devastating, but what came next was even worse. Delilah, emboldened by Marcus's defection, launched a counterattack that caught us completely off guard. She hired a prestigious law firm specializing in corporate disputes and family business conflicts. Her lawyers argued that the entire investigation was a malicious attack orchestrated by a disgruntled family member who was angry about being passed over for promotion. They painted me as an unstable individual who had violated company policies by accessing confidential information, invaded my sister's privacy by searching through her personal files, and then fabricated evidence to support wild conspiracy theories. Marcus's retraction was presented as proof that the technical evidence was unreliable, and they suggested that other witnesses had been pressured or manipulated into supporting false allegations. But Delilah's most devastating move was turning our parents against the investigation. She convinced them that I was trying to destroy the family business out of jealousy and spite, using our father's natural desire to avoid public scandal and our mother's fear of family conflict. Within a week of Marcus's betrayal, my parents called a family meeting where they announced they wanted all investigation activities to cease immediately. "This has gone too far," my father said, his voice heavy with exhaustion and disappointment. "Whether the allegations are true or false, this investigation is tearing our family apart and damaging the company's reputation. I want everyone to step back, let emotions cool down, and find a way to move forward together." My mother, tears streaming down her face, pleaded with me to stop this madness and find a way to reconcile with Delilah for the sake of family unity. They were not asking me to admit I was wrong. They were asking me to prioritize family harmony over justice, to let millions of dollars in theft go unpunished to avoid further conflict. The betrayal by Marcus had created a domino effect that threatened to destroy everything we had built. Uncle Thomas began expressing doubts about continuing the investigation without stronger evidence. Sarah Thompson and Jennifer Walsh, fearing for their jobs, distanced themselves from our coalition. Even Patricia Williams warned me that proceeding without corroborating technical evidence would be professionally risky for her. For the first time since discovering Delilah's crimes, I felt truly alone. The sister who had stolen millions of dollars and systematically destroyed my reputation was being protected by family loyalty, while I was being portrayed as the villain for refusing to stay silent about her betrayal. But I had underestimated my grandmother Eleanor, and I had no idea that help was coming from a source none of us had anticipated. The week following Marcus's betrayal was the darkest period of my life. I felt completely isolated, watching helplessly as Delilah's counterattack gained momentum and our carefully built case crumbled. My parents refused to discuss the investigation, Uncle Thomas grew increasingly distant, and even Patricia Williams suggested we might need to abandon our efforts. But Grandmother Eleanor refused to give up. While I was drowning in despair, she was quietly working behind the scenes using resources and connections I did not even know existed. The breakthrough came from a direction none of us had anticipated. "Serafina, I need you to come to my house immediately." Grandmother Eleanor called me on a Tuesday morning, her voice carrying an urgency I had never heard before. "And bring all of our evidence files. We have a visitor who needs to see everything." When I arrived at her estate, I found her sitting in the library with a woman I did not recognize, a tall, elegant African-American woman in her 40s, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. She radiated the kind of quiet authority that suggested serious professional credentials. "Serafina, I would like you to meet Detective Angela Morrison with the Financial Crimes Division of the Connecticut State Police," Grandmother Eleanor announced. "Detective Morrison has been investigating a series of financial fraud cases involving family businesses, and she believes Delilah's activities may be connected to a much larger criminal network." My heart leaped with hope, but Detective Morrison's expression remained professionally neutral as she shook my hand. "Ms. Sterling, your grandmother contacted our department after learning about your investigation. Based on what she has shared, I believe your sister may be involved in activities that extend far beyond embezzling from your family business." Over the next hour, Detective Morrison revealed information that shocked even my grandmother. Delilah had not been working alone. The shell companies and fake vendor accounts she had created were part of a sophisticated money laundering operation that involved several other family businesses across New England. "We have been tracking a network of individuals who specialize in infiltrating family companies, gaining positions of trust, and then systematically draining assets while covering their tracks," Detective Morrison explained. "The pattern matches what you have documented almost exactly. Embezzlement disguised as legitimate business expenses, manipulation of family dynamics to avoid suspicion, and eventual plans to destroy the target company completely." The detective showed us evidence from other cases that mirrored Delilah's methods with eerie precision. In every instance, the perpetrator had been a trusted family member or long-term employee who used their insider position to steal millions of dollars over several years. The sophistication of the schemes suggested professional training and coordination. What makes this particularly disturbing, Detective Morrison continued, is that we believe these individuals are recruited and coached by a criminal organization that specializes in long-term financial fraud, targeting family businesses. Your sister may not just be a thief. She may be an operative working for a larger criminal enterprise. This revelation reframed everything I had discovered. Delilah's systematic approach to stealing money, manipulating family relationships, and planning to destroy our business was not just personal greed. It was a professional criminal operation executed with military precision. Detective Morrison also brought devastating news about Marcus Rodriguez's betrayal. Her investigation revealed that Marcus had not just been intimidated into withdrawing his support, he had been actively recruited to participate in covering up the evidence. We have been monitoring communications between your IT director and known associates of this criminal network, she explained. It appears that Mr. Rodriguez was offered substantial financial compensation to retract his testimony and help eliminate digital evidence of Miss Delilah's activities. His betrayal was not fear-based. It was financially motivated. The detective's investigation had uncovered additional evidence that we never could have accessed through our private efforts. Bank records showing connections between Delilah's accounts and known money laundering operations, communication records proving coordination with criminal associates, and most importantly, documented proof that our family business was being used as a hub for laundering money stolen from other victims. The good news, Detective Morrison said, is that your investigation provided crucial evidence that helped us connect the dots between multiple cases. The bad news is that the scope of this criminal enterprise means we need to move very carefully to avoid alerting other members of the network. But the detective brought more than just validation of our evidence. She brought the power of law enforcement resources that could not be dismissed or discredited by Delilah's lawyers. Search warrant subpoenas and criminal prosecution tools that would make Marcus's betrayal irrelevant and our parents' desire for family harmony secondary to legal requirements. Working with Detective Morrison also brought an unexpected ally from within our own company. Rebecca Martinez, our chief financial officer, had been noticeably absent from all previous discussions about the investigation. I had assumed she was either unaware of the situation or choosing to remain neutral to protect her position. The truth was far different. Rebecca had been conducting her own parallel investigation for months, documenting financial irregularities that she had initially attributed to accounting errors or system glitches. When Detective Morrison's investigation became official, Rebecca finally felt safe to come forward with evidence that proved even more damaging than what I had originally discovered. I have been seeing discrepancies in our financial reports for over a year, Rebecca explained during a meeting with Detective Morrison and my grandmother. Transactions that did not match supporting documentation, vendor payments that seemed excessive for the services provided, and accounting entries that violated standard procedures. I tried to discuss these issues with Delilah several times, but she always had explanations that sounded reasonable at the time. Rebecca's evidence was particularly valuable because it came from official company financial systems rather than documents found in Delilah's office. Her professional credentials as a certified public accountant and her reputation for meticulous attention to detail made her testimony virtually unassailable. More importantly, Rebecca had documented her attempts to discuss the irregularities with Delilah, creating a paper trail that showed our sister had been actively covering up evidence and misleading other employees about the true state of the company's finances. The most concerning discovery, Rebecca continued, was that Delilah had been pressuring me to approve financial transactions that I knew were inappropriate. When I questioned these requests, she implied that my job security depended on my cooperation and loyalty to her vision for the company. With Detective Morrison's law enforcement authority backing our investigation, the power dynamic shifted dramatically. Marcus's betrayal, which had seemed so devastating just weeks earlier, became irrelevant in the face of criminal prosecution. Delilah's lawyers, who had been so effective at discrediting our private investigation, found themselves facing experienced prosecutors with subpoena power and access to banking records they could not challenge. But perhaps most importantly, my parents could no longer ask me to prioritize family harmony over justice when criminal charges were being filed by law enforcement authorities. This was no longer a private family dispute that could be resolved through compromise and forgiveness. It was a criminal prosecution that would proceed regardless of our personal preferences. The nightmare was finally approaching its end, but none of us were prepared for how completely Delilah's world was about to collapse. The arrest happened on a crisp October morning, exactly 11 months after that horrible Thanksgiving dinner, when Delilah had called me a burden in front of our entire family. Detective Morrison and her team executed search warrants simultaneously at Delilah's apartment, her office, and the off-site storage facility where she had been keeping additional evidence of her criminal activities. I was not present for the arrest, but Uncle Thomas was at the office when law enforcement arrived. He later described watching Delilah being led away in handcuffs, her usual confident demeanor replaced by shock and disbelief. The sister who had always controlled every situation, who had manipulated family dynamics and corporate decisions with calculated precision, was finally experiencing consequences she could not talk her way out of. The evidence Detective Morrison's team uncovered during their searches exceeded even our worst expectations. Hidden in Delilah's apartment were detailed plans for expanding the criminal operation to target other family businesses across the region. Communication records showed coordination with a network of operatives who had infiltrated companies throughout New England, stealing millions of dollars while maintaining perfect cover as trusted employees and family members. Most shocking of all, investigators found evidence that Delilah had been planning to fake her own death once she had completely drained Sterling Hotels of assets. The plan involved disappearing to a non-extradition country with her stolen millions while leaving our family business in ruins and our parents believing their daughter had been murdered. The criminal charges filed against Delilah were extensive embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and racketeering. Marcus Rodriguez was also arrested as a co-conspirator, facing charges for his role in covering up evidence and accepting bribes to sabotage the investigation. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating to our case ultimately provided additional evidence of the criminal organization's methods and reach. The legal proceedings moved swiftly once the evidence was presented. Faced with overwhelming proof of her crimes and the prospect of decades in federal prison, Delilah accepted a plea agreement that required her to provide complete information about the criminal network and assist in prosecuting her co-conspirators. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution for all stolen funds. Marcus received a lighter sentence of 5 years in exchange for his cooperation, but his betrayal cost him everything: his career, his reputation, and his family's respect. The man who had chosen money over integrity discovered that his 30 pieces of silver came at a price he never anticipated. The financial recovery process was complex but ultimately successful. Detective Morrison's investigation had frozen Delilah's accounts before she could transfer the money offshore, allowing us to recover most of the stolen funds. The sale of her properties and assets provided additional compensation, and insurance policies covered the remaining losses. But the real healing began when our family finally understood the full scope of what had happened. My parents, who had initially pressured me to stop the investigation for the sake of family harmony, were devastated to learn how completely they had been manipulated. The daughter they had trusted and favored had been systematically destroying everything they had built while positioning herself to abandon them once the theft was complete. Serafina, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express, my father said during a private conversation after Delilah's sentencing. You showed courage and integrity when the rest of us were too blind to see the truth. You saved our family business and probably our lives by refusing to stay silent. My mother's guilt was even deeper. I failed you as a parent, she admitted through tears. I allowed Delilah's manipulation to poison my judgment, and I almost lost the daughter who was trying to protect us. Can you ever forgive me? The path to rebuilding family relationships was not easy, but it was genuine. My parents began including me in major business decisions, finally recognizing the leadership abilities that Delilah had spent years undermining. The sustainable tourism initiative I had proposed at that fateful Thanksgiving dinner was implemented with tremendous success, saving the company over $2 million annually, just as I had projected. Uncle Thomas became my closest advisor and mentor, teaching me advanced aspects of business management while constantly apologizing for doubting the investigation. "You have your grandmother's instincts and your grandfather's determination," he told me. "This company is lucky to have you leading it into the future." Grandmother Eleanor, my strongest ally throughout the nightmare, lived to see justice served and the family business restored to prosperity. She passed away peacefully 2 years later, knowing that the legacy she and my grandfather had built was secure in capable hands. Her final words to me were a reminder that sometimes the most important battles are the ones we fight for truth and justice, regardless of the personal cost. The most unexpected blessing came from the relationships I built during the investigation. Patricia Williams became not just a professional colleague, but a trusted friend who taught me valuable lessons about financial management and forensic accounting. Rebecca Martinez and I developed a partnership that transformed our company's financial operations and eliminated vulnerabilities that had made Delilah's crimes possible. Detective Morrison remained in contact, even after the case was closed, occasionally consulting with me about other family business fraud cases. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was not unique. Criminal organizations specifically target family businesses because emotional manipulation can be as effective as financial deception in achieving their goals. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that chosen family can be just as powerful as blood relationships. The people who stood by me during the darkest period of my life, Grandmother Eleanor, Uncle Thomas, Patricia Williams, Rebecca Martinez, and Detective Morrison, became my real family, bound together, not by genetics, but by shared commitment to truth, justice, and mutual support. Sterling Hotels not only survived Delilah's betrayal, but emerged stronger than ever. The company now leads the industry in sustainable tourism practices, has expanded to 12 properties across 3 states, and maintains the highest ethical standards in all business operations. The lessons we learned from nearly losing everything made us more vigilant, more grateful, and more committed to the values that truly matter. Looking back, I realized that Delilah's cruel words at Thanksgiving dinner were actually the catalyst for exposing her crimes and saving our family. If she had not publicly humiliated me, I might never have been motivated to prove my worth through deeper involvement in company operations. Her attempt to destroy my confidence ultimately led to discovering her betrayal and bringing justice to light. Today, I serve as Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Hotels, a position I earned through competence and integrity rather than family favoritism. The burden Delilah claimed I represented became the strength that saved everything our family had built. The experience taught me that justice is not always immediate, but it is inevitable for those who persist in pursuing truth. Sometimes the people who hurt us most provide the greatest opportunities for growth and positive change. And most importantly, family loyalty should never require staying silent about criminal behavior or accepting abuse in the name of keeping peace. I want to hear from you about your own experiences with family betrayal and justice. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was working against you? How did you handle the situation when family loyalty conflicted with doing what was right? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who is facing similar challenges. If this story of family revenge and ultimate justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength in difficult situations. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that standing up for truth is always worth the fight, even when the people you love try to silence you. Thank you for watching and for supporting my journey from family burden to business leader. Remember that your voice matters, your truth has power, and justice may take time, but it always finds a way to prevail.